Right now, as you're watching this, something is happening inside you that you have never once thought about. Your heart is beating. It didn't ask you. It never asks you. It just quietly does the single most important job in your entire body and takes 0 days off, no complaints, unlike the rest of us. Your eyes are moving across the screen, turning light into meaning. Somewhere behind your ribs, warmth is radiating out of you. The exact warmth another person would feel if they reached out and held your hand, and you're just sitting there, existing, breathing, probably half thinking about what's for dinner, assuming that the thing doing all of this is your body. It isn't. Here's the idea that's going to reorganize how you think about yourself for the rest of this video, and possibly for the rest of your life. You are not your body. You are the energy flowing through it, and the only real difference between you, a living, thinking, feeling person, and a cold body lying on a table is not the flesh. It's not the bones. It's not even the brain. It's whether energy is still flowing through the whole thing. A dead body has all the same parts you have, same organs, same cells, same DNA. What it doesn't have is the flow. And the moment that flow stops, notice how we talk. We don't say your body left, we say you left, as if you were never really the body at all. Which, spoiler, you weren't. This isn't poetry. This isn't some vague spiritual thing to make you feel nice before bed. This is coming out of one of the most rigorous research labs in the world, run by a scientist named Dr. Martin Picard at Columbia University, who has spent his entire career studying the tiny structures that make this flow possible. And once you understand what they are and where they came from, you'll realize that you are far stranger, far older, and far more alive than you've ever been told. Let's start with the scale, because the scale is genuinely absurd. Inside your body, right now, there are about 5,000 trillion mitochondria. Not thousand, not million, trillion, 5,000 of them. These are the little engines inside your cells that take the food you eat and the oxygen you breathe and turn them into the energy that keeps you alive. You have around 5 trillion cells with a nucleus, and inside each one, on average, about 1,000 mitochondria, quietly working every second without a break, without a weekend, from the moment you were a single cell in your mother's body to the moment you eventually stop. That is a work ethic no human has ever come close to, and they do it without so much as a thank you. And here's the first thing that should make you feel a little strange. That warmth I mentioned, the warmth someone feels when they shake your hand, when they hug you, when they lie next to you at night. You didn't generate that with your body in any abstract sense. That heat is your mitochondria. As they flow energy, they release warmth, constantly, like billions of microscopic campfires. So when you feel the warmth of another human being, you're not feeling their skin. You're feeling the heat pouring off 5,000 trillion tiny engines. You are, quite literally, feeling their energy. We use that phrase all the time. I felt their energy. We say it about people we like. We say it about people who ruined a dinner party. Turns out, both times, you weren't being dramatic. You were being scientifically accurate. Now, here's where the story gets deeply weird, because these engines that power you, that warm you, that make you you, were not always part of you. They weren't always part of anything. About 1.5 to 2 billion years ago, there were two completely separate living things. Two different kinds of bacteria drifting through an ancient world you would not recognize. One of them had figured out how to use oxygen to make energy. It was efficient, powerful, and small. The other one couldn't use oxygen at all. It was bigger, a little clumsier, and it survived by fermenting its food. The same basic process that makes bread rise and beer bubble. So one of your ancestors was essentially a tiny brewery. Two strangers, two totally different survival strategies. And then, at some point, in a moment nobody witnessed and nobody recorded, the big one and the small one came together. Maybe the big one swallowed the small one and, for reasons we still don't fully understand, didn't digest it. Maybe the small one invaded the big one like an infection and just never left. The worst house guest in history, still here 2 billion years later. Either way, they merged, and they never came apart again. Think about what that means. Everything you are, everything you've ever done, every thought you've ever had, traces back to a merger between two microscopic organisms that decided, or accidentally discovered, that they were better off together than apart. The greatest relationship in the history of Earth, and neither of them meant to do it. But here's what I find most fascinating, and honestly, it's the part that reframes everything. Before this merger, most cells on Earth were loners. They were antisocial, little selfish machines, foraging for themselves, replicating, surviving, caring about nothing but their own existence. Basically single guys in a studio apartment. And then mitochondria arrived, bringing this enormous new supply of energy, and something changed. Cells started to cooperate. They started to specialize. One cell could say, you handle the energy and I'll handle movement. You be the gut, I'll be the muscle. You compute, I'll pump blood. That is division of labor. That is the beginning of teamwork. That is the beginning of the body itself. And it may have started because two bacteria stopped being alone. In other words, the reason you're not a puddle of independent single cells, the reason you have a liver that feeds you, and a heart that carries you, and a brain that plans your future, and immediately worries about it, might come down to the moment life stopped being selfish. And the thing that made it stop being selfish was the mitochondria. So, they're power plants. They're heaters. They're the reason complex life exists at all. But we're not done. Because what they actually do inside you is stranger than any of that. Here's what you've probably been told, if you were told anything at all. Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. You maybe learned that in school, wrote it on a test, high-fived a friend, and never thought about it again. They make ATP, the energy currency your cells spend to do everything. And that's true. But calling a mitochondrion a powerhouse is a bit like describing a human being as a thing that produces carbon dioxide. Technically correct, deeply missing the point. Because what Dr. Picard's research and others have found is that mitochondria don't just make energy. They sense, they communicate, all along their surface. There are receptors, little antennas, picking up signals. Is there enough energy? Are we running low? Is there a stress hormone in the area? Is something dangerous coming? They monitor what's happening inside the cell and outside the cell, and then they talk to each other. A whole collective of them, coordinating, responding, deciding. Picard describes them as a kind of distributed brain, an intracellular brain, not the one in your skull. A second layer of intelligence, 5,000 trillion units strong, humming underneath everything you consciously experience, and frankly, running the place while your conscious mind takes credit for it. And I want you to sit with the strangest thing they do, because it sounds like something out of fiction. Your mitochondria hold a veto over whether your cells live or die. Every day, in your body, cells commit suicide, on purpose, for the greater good. It's called programmed cell death, and it's completely normal, which is a sentence that sounds alarming and is somehow fine. A cell that's damaged, or dangerous, or no longer needed, gets the signal and it dismantles itself, so the whole organism stays healthy. It's how you sculpt fingers out of a webbed hand before you're even born. It's how you quietly clear out cells that could one day become cancer. And the thing that gives the final order, the thing that decides whether a cell keeps living or shuts itself down, is the mitochondria. They are, in a very real sense, sitting in the driver's seat of life and death billions of times a day in total silence inside you, right now, making executive decisions you will never be consulted on. So when I say you are the energy flowing through your body, I don't mean it as a metaphor. I mean that the flow of energy managed by these ancient engines is what decides what lives, what dies, what cooperates, what grows. Stop the flow, and there is no you. There's just a body. Same parts, no person. Now let's talk about that flow directly, because understanding it explains something about your own life you've probably always felt but never had words for. Inside every one of your mitochondria, energy moves like electricity. The food you eat carries electrons, tiny charged particles that were originally captured from sunlight by a plant in a green leaf somewhere. Your mitochondria pull those electrons off one by one and flow them like current through a circuit. And just like a battery, the current has to flow towards something. In your case, it flows toward the oxygen you breathe. That's the entire point of breathing. The electrons from your breakfast flow down through the circuit, and at the very end, they meet oxygen and they become water. That's it. That's the deepest secret of being alive, and it's slightly underwhelming when you say it out loud. You are a river of electrons flowing from your food toward the air, turning into water as you go. And it's that flow, that endless, silent, invisible flow, that is doing the living for you. Want to actually feel it? Try this. Take a breath in, let it all the way out, and then, with your lungs empty, just hold. Don't breathe. And pay attention to what starts to happen. At first, nothing. Then, a few seconds in, a pressure, a discomfort that builds, a signal rising up from somewhere deep that goes from mild to urgent to, okay, this was a stupid idea, until your body overrides you completely and you gasp. Now, what were you actually feeling there? You were feeling your mitochondria run out of oxygen. Every millisecond, they're consuming it, flowing those electrons toward it, and the moment you stop resupplying the air, the electrons have nowhere to go. The flow starts to stall, and your body, which evolved to treat that stall as a life or death emergency, panics and yells at you. That horrible, drowning, starving for air feeling is not really about your lungs. It's about the flow of energy hitting a wall. And here's the unsettling part. That's the extreme version. But Dr. Picard suggests that some people live with a faint trace of that exact feeling all the time. A low, constant sense of running out, of being drained, of energy that won't move the way it should. We give it names: burnout, fatigue, sometimes depression. But underneath the label, it may be the very same thing you just felt holding your breath, turned down to 5% and left quietly running in the background of someone's entire life. Here's why this matters for your actual day. That flow has a budget, a fixed one, and no, you cannot ask for an increase. You do not have unlimited energy, nobody does. And Dr. Picard's work shows your body is constantly deciding where to spend that limited budget. Exactly like a business, except this one can't hire more staff, and there's a hierarchy. You've maybe heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the idea that a person has to have food and safety before they can worry about relationships, and relationships before they can chase their dreams. Your body runs on a hierarchy of energy needs that works almost the same way. Survival first, everything else later. And the things that get cut first, when energy gets tight, are the long-term, low-priority projects. The maintenance, the repair, the keeping you young department, which is apparently the first thing to get its funding slashed. Which brings us to one of the most haunting findings in all of this. Stress, not the event, the response. In Picard's lab, they took living cells and gave them the equivalent of a stress hormone, cortisol, the chemical your body floods itself with when it thinks something is wrong. And they measured how much extra energy those cells burned just preparing for a threat that wasn't even real. The answer was up to 60% more. 60%. Just to worry, just to brace. Now, your whole body has buffers, so you personally aren't burning 60% more every time you open an email that starts with quick question. But the principle is brutal and clear. Worrying about the future, ruminating about the past, replaying that conversation from 2019 that went sideways, it all costs energy. Real, physical, measurable energy, energy stolen straight out of the budget that was supposed to keep you healthy. It's not the stress that burns us down. It's the response to the stress. And you can see the receipts on people's faces. Think about presidents. They walk into office with dark hair, and a few years later they walk out gray, looking like they've aged 20 years and 8. That's not a coincidence, and it's not just time. It's energy. Under relentless stress, the body pulls resources away from the low priority jobs, and the pigment in your hair is very, very low on that list. When there's a lion chasing you, your body does not care about your highlights. And chronic stress is a lion that never gets tired and never eats. Here's the hopeful twist though, and it's a real one. Picard's lab discovered that gray hair can actually reverse. They found single strands of hair that were dark, then went white, then turned dark again, all on the same strand. And when they looked at when the reversal happened, it lined up with the least stressful periods of a person's life. A vacation, a break, a week where nobody emailed them the word urgent, a window where the energy stopped being drained and flowed back to the things that keep you young. It doesn't work forever, and it doesn't work for everyone, but it's proof of something extraordinary. Aging, at least in part, is not a straight line down. It's a flow, and flows can change direction. So let me ask you the question this has all been building toward. If you are energy, and that energy is finite, and it flows where your body tells it to go, then what is the single most important thing you can do with your life? And the answer that comes out of this science is not what you'd expect. It's not eat more. You cannot simply pour more fuel in and feel better. That's not how the budget works, no matter how much the third coffee promises otherwise. The answer is stop wasting it. Stop hemorrhaging your energy on stress that isn't real, on threats that never come, on the endless low-grade worry that drains the tank all day long, because every unit you don't waste on fear is a unit that goes to repair, to growth, to becoming more fully yourself. And there's a subtler way to waste energy that has nothing to do with stress at all. It's about focus. Picard uses an image I genuinely can't stop thinking about. Take an ordinary light bulb and take a laser. Here's the strange part. They can both put out the exact same amount of energy. The difference isn't how much, it's how organized it is. In a light bulb, the light sprays out in every direction, scattered, incoherent. Every ray doing its own thing, and it gives up after a few feet. In a laser, every single wave is lined up, in phase, moving together, and that same amount of energy can travel for miles and cut through steel. Same energy, completely different resume. And that, it turns out, is a startlingly good description of a human life. When your energy is scattered, when you're pulled in 10 directions, worrying about this, half chasing that, committed to nothing and 11 browser tabs deep, you're a light bulb. You feel busy and drained, and you somehow never get anywhere. But when your energy is aligned, when you actually know what matters and point everything at it, you become a laser. That's what people are really describing when they talk about someone with presence, or drive, or that unmistakable focus you can feel across a room. It isn't that they have more energy than you, it's that theirs is coherent, and that coherence has a name we've been circling this entire time: purpose. Purpose is the thing that takes the scattered light of a life and lines it up into a beam, which leads us to one last piece of evidence that ties this whole strange story together, and it might be the most beautiful one. Researchers in Chicago spent years following people, asking them over and over how much purpose they felt in their lives, how connected they felt, how much meaning. And then, after these people died, the scientists looked at their brains, specifically at a region behind the forehead involved in reasoning and decision making, and they measured the mitochondria. What they found was this: the people who had felt the most purpose in life had the most efficient mitochondria. Their cellular engines flowed energy more easily, less resistance, more life. Now, we don't fully know which way the arrow points. Maybe having efficient mitochondria makes you feel more purposeful. Maybe feeling purposeful actually shapes your mitochondria. The best evidence says it goes both ways. Your mind can change your engines, and your engines can change your mind. Which means the way you live, the meaning you chase, the people you love, the things you refuse to waste your energy on, all of it reaches down, past your thoughts, past your organs, all the way into these ancient bacteria that have been squatting in your cells for 2 billion years, and it changes them. So let's come back to where we started. You sitting there, watching this, warm, breathing, still probably thinking about dinner, assuming you are your body. You're not. Your body is the vessel. What you actually are is the flow, the river of energy moving through 5,000 trillion engines that were once 2 lonely bacteria that decided to stop being alone. You are not a fixed object. You are not a machine you refuel. You are a pattern of energy, moving, transforming, warming the people near you, deciding every second what to keep alive and what to let go. And unlike almost everything else you were ever taught about your body, this one comes with a choice, because you actually get some say in where that energy goes. Next time you feel that warmth on your own skin or coming off someone you love, remember what it actually is. It's not just heat, it's 2 billion years of unbroken flow, running through you, right now, doing the one thing it has always done, keeping you alive.